told me not to start Matt Forte. I knew better, right? We are huddling up. Welcome to Fantasy Football. I'm Lauren Shehadi alongside Jamey Eisenberg. This video brought to you by Norton because every click matters. I knew that. But what is the deal? How do fantasy owners, Jamey, set their lineups with all these backup running backs going off at different weeks?
Yeah, you know, it's hard because you're seeing a lot of these backup options step up.
Right.
Mostly due to injury, but I think
And
you're
Matt
seeing a
Forte
lot of
not
these
playing
guys
well.
really start to play well. You look at the list here, and you're seeing some of these guys based off injury situations. Justin Forsett, as you know, Julius Jones was out. You're seeing Chris Brown and Steve Slayton share time. And as we know, Larry Johnson taking charge in that Cincinnati backfield with Cedric Benson missing another game. Same thing with Jarius Norwood with Michael Turner being hurt. It's kind of, you know, you have to really just look at the matchups when you're talking about some of these backup options. Obviously, Justin Forsett's going to continue to run well if Julius Jones remains out. Cedric Benson is expected back in Week 13, so that's going to really limit the number of carries and the production for not only Larry Johnson, but also for Bernard Scott. But you're seeing these guys get the opportunity to play well, and this is why we always tell you, play the waiver wire, make those moves because they're going to help you down the stretch. And Lauren, it's interesting because you're seeing in Houston with Steve Slayton sharing carries with Chris Brown, he's going to be around 8 to 10 fantasy points. He's not a bad flex option on given weeks. You have to handcuff Adrian Peterson and Chester Taylor. I'm shocked that he's out there still, only owned in 67% of leagues. And as you know, with guys like Brian Westbrook, he's going to be out another 2 games. Clinton Porter's dealing with the concussion. There are running backs out there, and there are guys probably on your bench that could be worth starting most weeks. You
know, Jamey, Jason Snelling, not on that list. You did give the caveat if Michael Turner does not play, but it kind of backfired on them.
Oh, it backfired completely. It backfired on the Falcons. It backfired on fantasy owners. It backfired on me for saying he was the start of the week. It was just a horrible situation for what happened in terms of Week 12. You know, we had Snelling as a start of the week. We did that on Tuesday. We did the video last week on Wednesday. The column was up on Wednesday. You got to look at it, what was going to happen the next few days, and we explained that to you, that if Michael Turner does return, that this potentially could happen, that Snelling would take a backup role. We expected, though, that Turner would be reserved, and we hope that that's what the Falcons would do because now you see Michael Turner, he got hurt again. Now this high ankle sprain could return. He could be out for a lot longer, and now with the fantasy playoffs, you really have to know what's going to happen going forward. Now with the Falcons, you see Jarius Norwood, he comes in, he has a touchdown out of the backfield as a receiver. They're probably going to split carries if, in fact, Turner misses more time as expected. So you'll see Norwood, you'll see Snelling, you'll see these 2 guys sharing reps. It makes sense that if you still have Snelling, don't drop him. I know a lot of people are going to want to say, I want to get rid of this guy because of what happened and the poor play that he showed. But as we saw, if Turner's out, then you'll see Snelling and Norwood share carries. Snelling's still the better fantasy option of these 2. So hopefully it didn't ruin your fantasy week. I took the hit myself. I dropped him in a couple of leagues, or I'm sorry, I started him in a couple of leagues, and that really hurt me.
And it backfired. Okay, Matt Ryan also got hurt. Big Ben, Kurt Warner missed those games. Eli with the foot issue. You know, help a girl out. What do we do?
Yeah, it's tough with the quarterbacks because you're seeing a lot of these guys show up on the injury report, and you'll see here the names that you just mentioned. You know, the quarterbacks that really got hurt, at least in terms of leaving the game, it was only Matt Ryan. But you saw Ben Roethlisberger, Kurt Warner, they missed the game. They were expected to play, but as we know, and we've talked about all season long with these concussions, this is what happens. This is what you have to be prepared for. And then Eli Manning, this is something that you just have to keep an eye on. But the thing with Eli Manning, he's not really a starting fantasy option. Now, the quarterbacks that you could potentially use to replace these guys with, and we saw some fantastic performances in Week 12.
Jason Campbell, 23 fantasy points.
Jason Campbell, 23 fantasy points. Who would have thought that?
Who would have thought that about Vince Young? I mean, I know you said he was a sleeper, maybe?
Yes, he was. We did have him as a sleeper.
But that's better than expected. It had to be, right?
Well, of course. It's a career high, 387 passing yards. Now, when you're looking at these guys, the guy that you want to target for the most part, the first guy you want to pick up if he's available, he's only owned in 55% of leagues, is Alex Smith because he's got a great matchup against Seattle in Week 13. Vince Young's got a tough matchup coming forward, and I know you and Dave will probably get into this with the move makers on Tuesday, but you're looking at some of these guys when you talk about Vince Young, difficult matchup against Indianapolis, but he's been averaging 16 fantasy points in the 5 games that he's been a starter. Now that obviously is bolstered by the big game he had against Arizona, but still you're looking at a guy that's been pretty consistent. Ryan Fitzpatrick played well. I don't love his matchup in Week 13, and if Matt Ryan's out, Chris Redmond, in 2007 when they had that whole mishmash of quarterback situations following the Michael Vick saga before they got Matt Ryan, Chris Redmond closed December in 2007, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in his last 5 games. Wow. So you're talking about a guy that could be a good replacement for Matt Ryan when you have Roddy White and Tony Gonzalez.
Hopefully he can channel those numbers from 2007, right? You know, watching the Skins game, I didn't think Deshaun Jackson was as injured as he is. Is it a concussion? What's the latest?
It's a concussion, and he's probably going to be dealing with this throughout the week. And as we know with concussions, and certainly the Eagles are no stranger because of what happened with Brian Westbrook, they're going to be very cautious with him. So you're going to see Deshaun Jackson go through this string of tests. The same thing happened with Roethlisberger, same thing happened with Warren. Warner, excuse me, and looking at the running back issues with Clinton Portis and Westbrook, as we mentioned, you're going to see Deshaun Jackson probably be questionable going into Week 13 against Atlanta, and he may miss the game, so you have to be prepared for that. So I think when you talk about the injuries, the two biggest names on here are the two guys for the Eagles. Brent Selleck has what is rumored to be torn ligaments in his thumb. Now, the early reports are he's going to try and play through it. He did not leave the game against the Redskins, so that's a good thing. But you're talking about a number 1 tight end, obviously a number 1, or at least at worst case, a number 2 wide receiver. Go out and pick up Jason Avant right now because he's played well the last 3 weeks. Could be a very solid replacement if, in fact, Jackson misses the game. It's really not going to impact Donovan McNabb too much because Atlanta's secondary is horrible going into Week 13. But if these injuries linger, because he can't go without Brian Westbrook, Jackson, and Selleck, and still expect him to play at a high level.
If Jackson doesn't play, hopefully fantasy owners of Selleck, if he does play, will reap the benefits, right?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, we'll see how it all turns out. Thank you so much for watching. For Jamey Eisenberg, I'm Lauren Shehadi. Good luck. We'll talk to you soon.